Here's a game I've been wanting to gush over for a very long time in a review. Squaresofts Secret of Mana was devised by creator Hiromichi Tanaka and released for the Super Nintendo in 1993. Now this could be hands down, in my opinion, the greatest RPG of its era and possibly of all time. Whilst it follows the same tried and tested formula of a courageous hero finding a legendary sword destined to save the world from evil, it manages to combine and weave this element into a gripping plot in which the world's mana is running out, and evil forces are harnessing it for their own ends, resurrecting an ancient flying doom ship known as the Mana Fortress. In the past, the power of mana was being abused by mankind for evil purposes. The gods in retaliation, however, sent giant flying creatures to stop them. However, an ancient hero who wielded the legendary mana sword was finally able to destroy the fortress and restore peace to the land, after which the sword was then placed into a stone that could only be pulled out by a new hero whom destiny deems to be the chosen one, ready to stop the evil empire from repeating history. Interestingly enough, this game is set to be released for a proposed Super Nintendo CD add-on, thanks to Sony and Nintendo in talks about teaming up. Squaresoft, the game's developers, from what I understand, were working on the game expecting the deal to go ahead. However, Sony pulled out because they wanted to lead the next wave of consoles and realised that they could utilise the CD technology themselves, and realising its potential, they would look to corner the market and become major players in the games industry. I could only imagine what the Secret of Mana would have looked like had the deal not fallen through. Squaresoft, it seemed, would have been able to use enhanced visual, sound and effects, and the game may have been closer to what Final Fantasy VII would eventually become. However, whatever enhancements and ideas were scheduled for this add-on would now have to be scrapped and modified, so Squaresoft worked diligently to try and retain as much of the game as possible in the 16-bit Super Nintendo. The game sees you play as a young boy who, after playing, hears a voice calling him near his home village of Potos. After following the voice down a small stream, he sees a sword which is stuck in a stone and a ghost appears telling him to pull it out. The boy does just that, but unbeknownst to him, monsters immediately start appearing everywhere, and it turns out that the sword was the one thing preventing this. However, evil forces are now intent on using the power of all the mana seeds situated in various palaces to resurrect the ancient mana fortress and again rule the world, so it really is the lesser of two evils by pulling out this sword. All of a sudden the boy gets back to his home village, destroys a monster attacking it and is banned by the elder who blames him for the monsters appearing. That's gratitude for you. So the hero must go through this massive adventure trying to not only release the power from the seeds to reactivate the mana sword, which steadily grows in power, but also must become the legendary hero fortune favours in order to stop the evil empire. So typically you'll start off really weak and must grind to earn money and experience points, as well as levelling up weapons, skills, power and other attributes. However, the nature of the game means that it's easy for hardened RPG veterans to understand, and also newcomers at the same time. The statistics are all easy to understand and use, and you are told when you have levelled up. One highlight which many brings up in reviews is the intuitive ring menu system, which means a simple tap of the button allows you to change weapons, use items, cast spells, equip and unequip armour, and also set attacks by the other two members in your party. That's right, eventually the boy meets a young girl and a small sprite child, and these two can also be controlled by pushing select and can level up just as the main character can. Anyone who hates random battles in most RPG games will be pleased to know that Secret of Mana doesn't operate this way. The monsters are of course in your way all the time, and you can choose to fight them immediately or avoid them. This is so refreshing and means you can grind whenever you want to. Although grinding is encouraged, can be slightly long-winded in most games, here it is really rewarding the more you grind. The game doesn't penalise you too much if you don't have the latest armour upgrades or levels of magic. You might find that certain enemies will knock you around a bit more than you'd like, and this can be annoying, and whilst the game might hint to you to gain more experience and get a little stronger, it is entirely in your hands and is never overly forced, but gently encouraged. The coolest thing about this game is that weapons are not purchased, but rather given to you and are upgraded with special orbs you find in treasure chests or from defeating bosses. The trade-off is that you will have to pay to have the weapons forged and upgraded to become super weapons from a blacksmith, but the fact that you get such a selection of different ones to use is awesome. Again, you can choose for yourself at any time which weapons you want to equip your party with, and the more experienced they become with each one will lead them to dishing out high impact charge attacks, shaking the enemy me to their very core. Of course, there are many shops in the game where armor and health items need to be purchased, and as you earn more money and visit more of the world, you will be able to buy better and more durable equipment. One of my favourite characters in the game is Nico the cat. Now this character has his own house, but often sometimes appears in different locations, which is extremely handy and kind of reminds me of the merchant from Resident Evil 4. Also, I don't know if this has ever been brought up before in any reviews, but has anyone noticed that Nico's items, armor and health are way too overpriced? I mean, I could pay him 1,000 gold pieces for a fairy walnut, but other shops only sell them for 500. The same goes for some of the same armor. I don't know why this is the case. I can only surmise that perhaps Squaresoft were probably expecting the player to buy items off him there and then because he's directly in your path, rather than having to backtrack to a cheaper shop. The real kicker is at the very end of the game, Nico does actually sell the best equipment you can buy. However, for what I understand, it's a lofty sum of money, but it does make things significantly easier. But again, the game is not impossible. If you don't want to tie yourself out there and then to grind to get better equipment, you can just get by with cheaper ones instead. The game is incredibly fast moving and introduces a lot of skills as progress is made. I mentioned earlier about the ability to use magical spells, which is key to fighting some of the tougher creatures and bosses in the game. Only the girl and the sprite are capable of casting magic. The girl's primary spells are defensive magic such as healing, and can temporarily cast elements such as fire, ice, stone and thunder onto weapons, enabling stronger attacks. The sprite, however, is the workhorse of the group, and he is gifted offensive magic using these same elements, which makes him a valuable component to the team. As both characters use magic throughout the game on enemies at certain times, these effects level up, allowing for stronger and more effective spells which can get you out of trouble, believe me. One thing I do find strange is that the main character is incapable of casting magic, yet the game allows you the option to give him a fairy walnut. Now the purpose of this walnut is to only restore magic points, which is very strange. The only things I can think of as to why this is perhaps Squaresoft were originally going to have him be able to cast magic at one point. However, I personally think it was a good idea not to go down this route. I really like the distinction between all three characters, as it makes for a more well-rounded experience. So you'll be visiting villages, towns, speaking to NPCs, occasionally running into key characters such as Gemma a Knight, who kind of clues you in as to where to go next, Luca, who lives in the water palace, Diluc and Fana, two individuals whom the girl in your party is trying to help, the hilarious Scorpion gang who try and ambush you after stealing the water seed, and of course the evil antagonists Thanatos and his bosses Sheik's Gestar, and the plethora of original ones such as Doomwall, Spiky Tigers, and even jolly old Saint Nick himself, Santa Claus, who turns into a vicious fire gigas due to the lack of mana and the fact that children had stopped believing in him. These boss battles perfectly complement the ring system, allowing you to be able to try and balance your resources, and it makes for some intense and exciting combat as you fire back and forth, hoping that you can wipe out the bosses as quickly as possible. Each and every boss encounter is incredibly gripping, tense and adrenaline filled, but at the same time they're not balls to the wall difficult, and I get the sense that Squaresoft designed the game this way. This was a very good decision, and you are rewarded the further you get through this sensational adventure by defeating each and every single one. Also, in all my time playing this game, I never even realised that it had a run button. This is a very handy feature and allows you to speed through most of the game, avoiding tough enemies, and looks really cool. Also, you too can play along with friends with the use of a multi-tap if you so desire, and this helps eliminate the CPU getting other players stuck on corners, but more on that later. Graphically, this is one of the most artistic and aesthetically pleasing games I've ever had the privilege to play on the Super Nintendo. The environment is beautiful and the sprites are incredibly detailed, and I like the fact that again all three characters are different, and also when key plot lines take place you can see the characters' expressions change. The art style itself is rich in visual detail and colour, yet has a very simplistic style. It's really hard to describe. I especially think that Secret of Mana uses the Mode 7 graphics of the SNES really well. When you eventually get to ride the huge white dragon, the world opens up even more, allowing you to view everything from above and travel literally anywhere. It honestly fills me with warm fuzzy nostalgia. Also, there are so many types of enemies to fight, and they can all change and get stronger the further that you get through this game. Everything from kung fu werewolves to multiplying blobs of slime, wolves, bats and scorpions, just to name a few. You can tell that Squaresoft didn't skimp on making each of them stand out. This whole game feels like this massive Japanese anime. The game also has one of the best musical scores ever by composer Hiroki Kikuta, with a mixture of gentle sweeping orchestral tunes, helping deliver emotional weight in combination with the urgency that is felt with the boss music, which remains my personal favourite track. Another highlight though has to be Thanatos' theme. It's perhaps one of the most sinister tracks in the game and sounds not only mysterious but also terrifying at the same time with evil undertones. So it's clear I think this game is a winner, but there were a few things that were kind of annoying. More often than not, when you have all 3 party members and are trying to move through certain areas, the other 2 members can get stuck on corners or scenery, meaning that you will have to either rush back to them or get them to follow you, or then manually push select and move them back into position. This means that certain enemies can inflict some cheap hits on you whilst you are trying to get all 3 into the optimum position to move on. This does happen quite a few times and often comes at the cost of using the run button, however. One of your characters will try and keep up, but upon doing so will start to lag behind and again gets caught on a wall or barrier, and you can't move forward until they are right by you. I said before that this was meant to be a game for the proposed CD add-on and probably would have been able to handle everything that is happening much better, so this problem probably wouldn't have occurred. However, in the developer's defense though, this is one of the most advanced games for the Super Nintendo, and with everything going on, I honestly think that the stuck characters wasn't entirely intentional, and Squaresoft really wanted to fit as much as they could using the 16-bit hardware and had to quickly make changes, which meant that issues like this were probably unavoidable. One thing I really hated was the layout of the fire palace, and would sometimes get confused time and time again as to where I was supposed to go. I eventually found the main room with all the giant goblets and the final orb. I succeeded in putting out all the flames apart from these 2 goblets. Nothing happened after that and I got very stuck and confused. I even left the room a few times and explored every inch of the fire palace. Apparently, having consulted an FAQ, I had to walk in between the 2 goblets to make a staircase appear leading to the Minotaur boss. Now I couldn't the staircase just appear on its own after I destroyed the orb. I know I'm probably nitpicking here, but was it really necessary to be so cryptic? Also, later on in the game you have to play for an incredibly tedious fortress, which not only is again extremely confusing like the fire palace, but it requires that you find all of the crystal orbs and use the required magic on each of them to finally open up the door to the bosses. This was one of the hardest fortresses in the game and was really difficult. A lot of people say that the Flying Manor Fortress, the final one, is really hard. I actually breezed through that with no problems, and even as a kid didn't find it that hard. So I honestly feel that the Sunken Fortress should have been the last stage, and would have preferred it that you had the boss rush there and then the final Thanatos fight. Also, I'm just thinking out loud here, but they just give you way too many orbs to find that it just become really mentally tiring for me. Despite these issues though, Secret of Mana is one of the greatest RPGs ever released and still holds up incredibly well today. If you're not a fan of role-playing games with random battles or want to play something a little different, then this is for you. The game leaves it up to you to grind for resources, but at the same time showers you with many rewards, sublime gameplay, incredible bosses, a beautifully crafted story, imaginative world, and just one of the best Super Nintendo experiences ever. Thank you so much for watching my review. If you have enjoyed it and would like to see more, then why not smash that like button and subscribe, as you'll really be helping my channel to grow and you'll be instantly notified every time I upload a new video. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you next time.
Welcome. I'll buy it at a high price. Now that's a weapon. Come back anytime. What are you buying? I see you have an eye for things.